Okay, Perry, we're good to go.
All right, why don't we get the meeting started? We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
of the
America,
United States of America
to the republic
and to the
for
republic
which it
for which it
stands,
stands,
one nation,
one
under God,
nation, under God,
indivisible, with
indivisible,
liberty and
with
justice
liberty
for
and
all.
justice for all.
Right. All right. Let's go to the agenda, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there anything on here that you either A, want to talk about, or B, you want pulled off for, for separate discussion?
I just had a question on one thing, but it's not,
Okay,
I don't need
go
it
ahead.
like removed or anything. I just wasn't sure. The athletics study center monitor, is that something that we do every year? I don't know how much I can say and not say.
Yeah, we have done it in the past. So there are some teams whose practices don't start immediately after school, and the students aren't able to get home and then get transported back. So they're able to stay in a supervised study hall and get work done.
Oh, okay. That's what that is. Okay, thanks.
Anybody else? All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any against? Okay. All right, so next is our amended safety plan. Didn't realize that we had to have a public hearing on it. So anyway, do you want to, I don't know who wants to take the lead.
I can give just an overview, the steps that we took in developing the plan, some revisions, and then the piece that we missed was the public hearing. So you probably heard it a few times already because I've had it in my superintendent remarks, and then you voted on it last time. But just to give the public an overview and a reminder, on September 7th, Governor Cuomo signed into law Chapter 168 of the laws of 2020 that requires public employers, including public school districts, to adopt a continuation of operations plan to be developed and embedded in the existing district-wide safety plan in the event that the governor declares a public health emergency involving communicable disease. So this plan included a number of steps that we had to follow and deadlines, which included review of the draft plan by our units, MTA, MAA, CSEA, which we completed, posting the draft plan on our website for 30 days for public to respond and give feedback and ask questions. And that was completed on February 22nd, started on February 22nd and went for 30 days. Then we had our safety committee review and we completed that. We had board approval, which we did on March 23rd, but now we're revisiting again. And then we posted the final plan on the website. And there were a couple of revisions from CSEA and our other units just to clarify and clean it up a little bit. They were minor but important. The district will conduct a PPE hazard assessment and equipment selection to determine appropriate PPE at time of known hazard in accordance with federal regulations, as well as the Department of Health, CDC, OSHA guidance. Another addition was the district will follow OSHA hazard communication regulation and New York State right to know law. So copies of safety data sheets will be available to all employees and kept in the worksite, and training on such chemicals, equipment, foggers, for example, and PPE needed will also be provided to all employees. And details such as changing head maintenance to head mechanic and adding greeters and SROs to the list of staff members requiring PPE. So we thank everybody who provided some feedback and ideas on how to enhance and strengthen our plan. And then all of that said, just what you said, Perry, we missed one step. We learned recently that we had to have a public hearing before seeking board approval. So as a result, we put it back on the agenda this evening. We're going to hold a public hearing and then we're going to seek board approval. So at this time, we look to the community and the board and anybody on this panel to ask questions or give feedback. Hey, Paul.
Okay. So does anybody on the board have anything that they wanted to add since the last time? All right, Cheryl, do we have any questions from the public? comments, questions related to this, though?
We do not.
Okay. All right. So do I have a motion to, as written in the next section? Hello?
Need a motion, Terry? So
Yeah,
moved.
we need a
So moved.
motion to, thanks, Paul. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Thanks. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any against? Very good. Okay, we'll move on to the next section. We have a guest, Rick Coffey is here, Keller Coffey, to take us through child abuse prevention presentation. Good to see you, Rick.
You're on mute, Rick.
I did the classic thing, right? Thank you, Perry. Same to you. Ms. Sprague, am I ready to share?
You are ready. You should be all
Alright.
set.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Sharing is caring. So, this slide is to remind me to note the time so I don't talk all of your ears off and don't take too much time. But my name is Rick Keller Coffey, as Perry said. First of all, thank you for letting me come and speak. I sort of put myself in here a little bit, and I appreciate you letting me do that. I'm a retired school teacher. I taught in the Poughkeepsie City School District for 30 years. I taught at the high school for 20 and 10 at the middle school. After I retired, I knew I wanted to get involved with something that I felt good about and I felt had meaning. And it's hard to not get behind child abuse prevention. So you can see, as an organization, you can see the mission there. And it's kind of a lofty mission, but it's something that you chip away at and chip away at. And so my role is to talk to different groups about child abuse prevention. And I just mentioned before the meeting that yesterday I had the opportunity to speak to all the middle school teachers, the high school and the elementary teachers in Pauling and the bus drivers. You probably know that now bus drivers are mandated reporters. So I'm going to be making phone calls to offer that service as well. Because I'm sure you have, every district does have people who have been teaching 15, 20, 25 years without having had any kind of refresher training in child abuse prevention and or child abuse signs and so on. People involved in education have to take a mandated reporter training before they get their certification, but then after that there are no refreshers whatsoever. I'm going to be talking to you in two ways. My job is to talk to anybody in the public. I'm focusing on schools right now, but I do presentations every Tuesday at 10 a.m. and 5 p.m. open to the public. Because again, the goal is to talk to as many people, to arm as many people with this information so that they can help to stop child abuse. The premise is that we all, statistically this is proven out, we all encounter children who are being abused. Whether you work with children directly or you just know children as friends of your own kids or through church or other organizations like that. The problem is that we often don't recognize the signs. Unless you have these things in mind, you'll see the behavior, but you don't necessarily put that together with it potentially being a sign of something more important and more dangerous for a child. The slide I put together because it's some Poughkeepsie Journal articles, the sort of headlines or information from those articles for the last year and a half. And down at the bottom, I listed the towns from which there have been reports of child abuse in Dutchess County. And these aren't just the ones that are in the newspaper. These are the ones I was able to see some other information. I don't see names and I don't know exact situations, but I've seen where cases have occurred. And if you're on top of your Dutchess County geography, you can see that every single town is listed. Every single town, every single cities, both of the small cities are listed. In other words, child abuse has occurred in each one of those places. And the interesting thing is that, there's a stereotype that, oh, poor people do this and so on. And the reality is that child abuse takes place within every race, within every religion, every cultural group, every ethnic group, every socioeconomic level. It's wealthy people, it's middle class, it is poor people, right? It's not just the poor inner city kids. And here it is right here. Some of these towns are perceived as rich places. Other ones, people think, oh, there are a lot of poor people there. Yeah, it covers all that. In fact, in Dutchess County, child abuse is perpetrated in 1 out of every 7 households. It means if you count 7 houses on your street, statistically, 1 of those 7 houses have child abuse occurring within them. That's a pretty close ratio. And you think of it that way, or maybe one apartment in an apartment building, or however you want to apply it. 1 out of every 7 households. So that begs the question. Well, let me also mention this, that the estimate is that nationally, that 5 out of 6 cases go unreported. 5 out of 6 cases go unreported. So in Dutchess County, on an annual basis, we have between 1,000 and 1,100 cases reported in Albany County. The thing that's estimated that I just mentioned is that 5 out of 6 go unreported. So that means that the reality for us is that we have between 6,000 and 6,600 cases each year. If you've been to Dutchess Stadium seats about 4,500 people. That means you could fill Dutchess Stadium, fill every seat with children who are abused within any given year, plus have an overflow. So it's about 1.5 stadiums worth of kids who are abused each year. So here's the crazy thing: 1 out of 7, every, the stadium I'm talking about, every town, and so on. Why is it that it goes unrecognized? Why is it that people don't realize that there is child abuse going on? I have an awareness test for you. I'm going to need to switch the audio, and then so that you can hear it, and then I'll talk to you on the other side.
This is an awareness test. How many?
I didn't see any thumbs up. Could you guys hear it?
I didn't hear it.
Okay. All right, let me try it again. Better? Oh,
No.
boy. Alrighty.
Maybe it's can anybody else hear it? Because it could be my.
I heard
I heard this is an awareness test and then it went away.
Yeah.
The first time only.
Right. Yep. First time.
How many passes does the team in white make? The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
So if we were together in person, I would ask how many people counted 13, and I'll bet most people did. Then I'd ask how many people saw the moonwalking bear, and I would guess that most people didn't. I know I didn't see it the first time, and then the second time it's very obvious, right? Child abuse can be like the moonwalking bear. It's in front of us. You're seeing it, but it's not in your consciousness. It's not the connection isn't there for what you are seeing. It's connected to, could be connected to child abuse. So, for example, if you had a child who there was a neighborhood kid who got into a lot of fights, did that connect with you that there might be bad things going on at home, or would you just think, what's the matter with this kid? Why is he getting into fights? Maybe one of your children used to like playing with Uncle Bob, right? Uncle Bob came to visit. They had a great time together. They play together. They sing together. Now you talk about Uncle Bob coming over and the child hides, your son or daughter hides behind mom's legs or in their bedroom. If you're a teacher, you have a child in class who suddenly becomes pretty withdrawn or distracted. You know, they're just not being themselves, and it's not one day they're tired, but their personality seems to have changed. Maybe you're a coach. You coach in the youth league soccer team or something, and there's a kid who comes to practice with these injuries all the time, and they always have some kind of story, but the stories don't make sense. They say, "Oh, I did this or I did that," and you think, I don't know. And why does he keep getting more injuries than the other kids? All those are red flags. Those are things that there could be something very bad going on for this child. And, none of them are absolute that, oh, if a kid has an injury, 2-3 injuries in a row, that's it. But these are things that ought to make people pay attention. Some other things that ought to be things that people recognize and hopefully connect to the possibility of abuse. Some stronger indicators than others, but if they're unkempt or have sort of a malnourished appearance, does the child seem constantly, every time you see them, they're tired? Are they not getting the right nutrition? Are they being forced to stay awake at night because something's happening to them? Are they staying awake because it's so loud in their house they can't sleep? Do they always talk badly about themselves? They're not just saying, we all have insecurities, but this child is constantly talking about how boring they are, how ugly they are, how incapable they are of doing things, right? That doesn't fall from the sky. They've been fed that information somehow, to where they believe they've internalized it. And so it could be one of these habit disorders or something else. Again, you see these behaviors or you hear these words, but you don't necessarily connect them. And I can tell you a story as a teacher where that in researching this job, I read a scenario and I thought, oh my God, I had a kid who did exactly that and it didn't connect in my brain. It was probably an indication that the child was being abused. Bedwetting, self-harm thoughts, somewhere in the suicide realm. Maybe they're always on alert, right? They always have that grown-up mode. I mean, there are always some kids who are mature for their age, but this child's a grown-up, and they never really let their hair down. They're always on guard, and they're maybe even to the point where they sit with their back to the wall. They're just ready for something. Or a child who, slightest touch, come on, honey, we're going inside, and they flinch. Oversensitive to things. All these things are things that could be, when I do the presentation, I put these in a more organized fashion. I apply them to different kinds of abuse. We talk about other scenarios and so on. So again, I'm talking to you now. Both, I want to give you some information, but also to tell you some things that I do when I do the full thing, not the short one, the short presentation here. We talk about disclosure. What happens if a child comes and tells you, or they say something that a kid might talk sideways, where they talk about something and they want you to understand what they're saying, but they don't say it directly. And so in either case, when they tell you about their situation, what do you do? What do you do? There's a way to handle it properly, and there are ways where you can really mess it up. We talk about that. And there are, of course, teachers and there are people close to kids who are disclosed to sometimes. By the way, two of the main things: do a lot of listening. Do a lot of listening to the child. If you feel you need to take notes or something, do that while you're. If you don't feel it's going to shut them down, take notes afterwards or whatever you have to do. But just listen, right? Don't be the investigator. Well, then what happened? Who else was there? What time was that? Don't do that. Don't do that. What should happen here in Dutchess County is you listen to it, you make the report. The child is taken to a place like the other half of the building that I work in, where a child was under what's called a forensic interview. People are highly skilled, and their job is to get the child to tell the story in their own words, recorded, and basically the child's testifying. I don't want to mess any of that up. I'm not the professional in that regard, so don't investigate. While teachers are teaching online, they're still mandated reporters, and I know we're all moving out of the teaching online thing, hopefully, for the long haul. But there are things that you can do while teaching online. There's some preventative measures that you can take. There are some things while you're interacting with children that you can listen for or watch for if the camera's on. conversations that you can have that can kind of lead children to talk about things that tell you a little bit more, and maybe enlist the help of other friends of the children to all kind of keep each other, keep an eye on each other, and so on. So there are ways to address child abuse, even teaching online. Rhetorical question, what would you do if you're a mandated reporter? By the way, mandated reporter means that by law you have to report, just in case people didn't know that term gets thrown around all the time. Mandated reporters have to report. In fact, there are legal penalties if you don't report under certain, usually the most. So they're required. The rest of us are not mandated reporters. So when I ask this question rhetorically, obviously mandated reporters have to report. The rest of us, there are all kinds of reasons why people don't report. Well, there's nothing I can do about it. Not true. Not true. With the CPCA, where I work, we say be a hero for kids. Know the signs, which is a big part of my presentation. Pay attention to the children that you see, which of course teachers do, and I'm sure you do too. But maybe paying particular attention to kids, or at least when you see kids now, the fire's lit of, oh, wait a minute, I remember hearing about that. And then if you suspect, call the hotline, right? You're not the expert. I'm not the expert, but I have a suspicion based on the knowledge I have, based on understanding the context of what's going on with this child. Maybe I know the family. I'm going to call, and then the experts can go and check it. So I want to talk about some real briefly, all kinds of reasons why people don't report, right? Oh, I don't want them to know it's me. What if I'm wrong? People say, what if I'm wrong? I don't want to be wrong, right? Again, you're not the expert. Nobody expects you to be right 100% of the time, but if you have enough of a suspicion, gosh, I'd rather be wrong than to wind up being right and not have reported. Here's the number one reason why people don't report. Say, well, I don't want that child to get into any more trouble. Sort of altruistic. If you think of it this way, if the child's being abused and you don't call, that child will continue to be abused. And so basically what's happened is you have a strong suspicion, maybe you even know they're being abused, you walked away and let it happen. Right? I wouldn't feel good about that. If the child's being abused and you do call, there's a really good chance that kid's life has changed in a very positive way. Conversely, if you make the call and you're wrong, right, you've called for erroneous reasons, there's no evidence to show that that parent then starts abusing the child. Nothing shows that. There's no indicators of that. There are no indicators of that. So no lose situation, possibly a big win for the kid. But anyway, I don't mean to be lectury, but there are all kinds of reasons why people don't report. Long-lasting consequences, one of the things I talk about as well, specifically towards education, brain development. Child abuse can affect brain development. So here we are, two children, both the same age. This child's brain appropriately developed, right? Not completely developed, but you see the lights in all appropriate places. This child was abused, and you can see all the gaps. Same age, underdeveloped, not appropriately developed for their age. Step back here, big development back here. That's where your fight or flight mechanism is. This child has lived through situations where they've had to exercise that a bit. Dangerous situations, fearful, anxiety producing. And up here, this is the part of the two main parts of your brain where your memory is developed, your attention span is developed, and your ability to control your own conduct. How's this kid going to do in school? Right? Not so well. Not good. Their memory is below appropriate level. Their attention span, ability to control their own conduct. Does this ever change, by the way? Do they ever develop? If the circumstances change, but in the meantime, especially for those lower levels, that child is, learning how to read, basic math skills, logic and sequencing, and all that introduction to that stuff, behind. They're going to fall behind. Psychological effects, depending on the intensity or the drasticness of the abuse. In adult life, depression, alcohol and drug abuse, not all these things not uncommon. Possible criminal behavior. 30% of people who are abused become abusers, right? Not 100%, but still 30 to 40%. Physical health, high incidence, they don't know why, high incidence of cancer, asthma, arthritis, high blood pressure, ulcers, and then finally relationship, right? As a child, we learn how to be in relationships, and if all the relationships you have are ones that are dangerous ones, it doesn't change when you're an adult, so it's hard to build a relationship. I also talk about, at the very end, I talk about all kinds of things. You don't have to wait until you consciously encounter a child who is being abused. Here are some things that people can do to help prevent child abuse. The overall effort, I send a longer list than this. These are just a couple of things, including, I just want to mention now, asking people to talk about suicide. Liking us on Facebook is a big help. It's free, it doesn't cost anything, but it helps us and help me find more audiences. So I'll even say this to you right now. If you have individual friends, or if you want to join in on the presentations on Tuesday, please, you're more than welcome. I'd love to have you. If you're part of a group, maybe a fire department or a library group or something, and you think the group would be interested, then please, I can set up special times and make an arrangement. I'm with Red Hook. I'm working on something of possibly doing when they do a board retreat, maybe work presenting to them. But there are all kinds of ways that I'm more than willing to present to people, nighttime, weekend. And then finally, just a little bit about us. The Child Advocacy Center is where children are brought when they have been abused. That's where the forensic interviews happen. Community education is me, and we do a internet safety program also. Personal safety is a terrific program where people go into the elementary schools and talk to children about where it's inappropriate to be touched, or if you feel unsafe, what you can do. All age appropriate, all very participatory with the children. It's terrific. They bring in puppets for the younger kids. It's great. I've gone and observed them. They're great. And I think they do every school district in the county except Millburn. I think they have not done Millburn. Supportive parenting program. We work with people with developmental disabilities, low IQs, and who have been abused themselves, and teach them parenting skills to help stop the cycle of abuse. So there, I hit it. Oh no, actually I came up short, 14 minutes, so that's good. I saved you guys some time. Here's my information. I'm going to send Ms. Spriggs a number of items to share with you if you don't mind. And one of them will be this. And if you have any questions or comments or anything, please let me know. It's a mission. It sounds like a corny word, but in joining this group, it's my mission. That's why I'm kind of pushy about getting to talk to you guys. It's mission to spread the word about the program as much as possible and about the signs of abuse, and that's the mission for the organization. I appreciate you listening, letting me come in and talk to you. And I'm going to be doing the full presentation for the Westchester County School Boards Association in May. So that's another way that you could tune in if you wanted to, if that's convenient. Terry, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Hey, just a question for you. Do you guys have like a consulting, to read policies and make sure that they're up to date and just review in general practices to say, this might have been good 5 years ago or 10 years ago, but now it should be updated to this. Is that something CPCA does?
No, we don't do that, but I know, being the main policy guy on our leadership board, that there is a policy that addresses child abuse, and I know that legally teachers have to be reminded each year that they are mandated reporters, and when they have to report and so on and so forth. Hotline number is supposed to be posted in the main office or the faculty room where it can be seen by everyone, or someplace where it doesn't dictate where. And I think the NYSSBA policy is pretty up to date. I know that there is the modification that's coming out because I wrote what's it called, a proposal at the last annual business meeting, and it was approved. But they're going to be coming out with an optional thing to adopt and include in your policies if you guys decide to accept that. And that will be that mention that the refresher trainings are not required, but this is a portion saying that you would add to your policy if you choose, saying that as a district, you're requiring the district to do refresher trainings for teachers every 3 years, I think is what I have, 3 or 5 years. But yeah, I don't think much has changed with the policy, and CPTA doesn't deal with that. So.
Any other questions for Rick? Yeah, and I wouldn't describe it as being pushy, Rick. I think you were more than patient. I think I pushed you off the agenda like 3 times. So,
No, well, thank you. Thank you all.
All right,
again.
very good.
I hope
Thank
to hear
you.
from you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank
Good
you,
night.
Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Ms. Sprague, I'll be talking to you.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, let's move to the budget development workshop.
Cheryl, could you enable sharing for me, please?
You're all set.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good evening, everybody.
Hey, Brian.
Are you all able to see my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So I have multiple things to share with you this evening. So I might have to do and get involved in some transitioning. So I'll just ask for your patience as that happens. So good evening, everybody. Tonight we are on update number 6, and it's our second budget development workshop in preparation for our next board meeting, where we're going to have a superintendent's proposed budget after your feedback from this evening. So the goals for tonight are to clarify any questions that you might have had from past presentations, to update the board on changes from previous presentations, also to update the board on the constraints of budget development given our current real life situations, mostly around revenues, answer any questions that the board may have regarding the presented budget, and then finally to get your guidance and consensus regarding any final adds or deletions that you'd like to see in the final 21-22 budget in order to prepare that final budget for adoption at the next board meeting. So the first thing that I wanted to do was, I understand that there were some questions about the cafeteria subcommittee's recommendations about how to create and how to decide where the calculation on the interfund transfer from previous years. There was, I'll reiterate for the board and for the public that there's just a little bit of frustration in general where, you know, we have an interfund transfer that we've thought about, and then it's never enough. So, you know, and then we come back to the board, April, May, June, and say, well, we need more money. So we've come up with, the cafeteria subcommittee has come up with a better method of dealing with that. So we actually budget the correct amount of money at the outset, and we're hopefully not coming back to the board saying that we need to have more money for the cafeteria fund. And I'll remind the board that the goal is to at least break even. You know, and that's what this calculation contemplates. So if we're talking about what we should budget and the amount that we should budget for the interfund transfer to the cafeteria fund, we talked about taking the average of the 3 previous years of the transfers. So we didn't want to have to rely on having an outlier year. As an example, what if one year we lost $100,000? Well, that almost never happens, as we can see. So we wouldn't want to rely too much on just 1 year's of data. So we talked about taking 3 years of data, and here with corrected math, in this instance, if we would have lost, or if we would have had $60,000, $55,000, and $55,000 of interfund transfers, the average here is about $56,000 and change. And what we said at the cafeteria subcommittee that we'd recommend to the board is that we would add that to the 3 previous years of losses. So remember, we want to be in a position where we break even. So if we're saying that our interfund transfer wasn't enough or it was too much, then if we add the previous 3 years of losses to it, that would even it out. So in this case, you see the $18,000, that the negative $18,000, that would mean that we would have actually been to the plus of $18,000 with the interfund transfer. And then with the $14,000 and the $14,500 positive, we add that all this together, we divide it by 3, and then we would say that even with these interfund transfers, we still lost approximately $3,500 a year. So what we did was then we recommended that you took the addition of that And what we would say is in the next budget year, we would be recommending that all things being equal, based on this calculation, we would be having an interfund transfer of a little over $60,000. So that's the calc. That's what made sense to the cafeteria subcommittee. That's what we're recommending. And in the budget documents, you'll actually see the old calculation. It was off by a couple $100. But that's what's in the budget document right now. So there's a, yeah, go ahead, Perry.
So I promised to, like, because I'm having trouble following this. I mean, it seems like we set a budget for food for the cafeteria, and then we immediately say, but we know we're going to need an extra $56,667, and more than likely that's not going to be enough. And this question is more for John and Howard, because I know how hard you guys have worked on this with Brian and the team. Does that make sense? Why wouldn't the cafeteria budget just be what it's supposed to be? I mean, obviously, we've been transferring money every year somewhere around $56,000, and using these numbers, somewhere around $56,000, and yet somehow I don't know. I'm just having trouble following. If the rest of the board is okay with it all, I'm fine, I guess. I just don't. It seems like it's like I know my heating bill is going to be $12,000 for the year, but I'm going to put money in another account someplace, and then when I realize I need extra money, I'm just going to transfer it in there. It's I don't know. It's just not. I don't know. And are we sure this is okay? I mean, to sort of plan it this way?
So I could take the second part of the question. I know you asked John and Howard. The answer is absolutely yes. This would be a recognized, what we actually have a methodology for planning, which is what we wanted to do, not just leave it to chance that it was going to be happening in a certain way. So yeah, from a, can we do it? Like from a legal standpoint, absolutely. We show it as an interfund transfer that the board approves in the adoption.
So really, going into the year, in the case of this chart, the budget for the cafeteria is the budget plus $56,000 and $3,500 is really the budget for the cafeteria. Whether we put it in a place where we can transfer it and then we go for a second transfer, the budget for the cafeteria is really the total number, all the interfund transfers and the budget that's been assigned to the cafeteria. Is that right?
Yeah, because and here's the why. Because in the example that you gave about the heating, we can say, all right, we're going to put on an extra sweater and we're going to put the degree down a couple of degrees, the thermostat down a couple of degrees. We don't in the cafeteria fund have the ability to say, we're going to stop buying food because we have to feed the kids. Or if we're not getting, we don't.
But on the other side, every year for at least the last 3 years, it's been between $55,000 and $60,000. And we've still, except for 1 year, we made some money. We still didn't hit it. Why isn't that just, or at least the 56.6 and the budget, the actual budget for the cafeteria? Why isn't that just their budget instead of playing that? And then we could track month by month against that budget to say, are we on track or not? I mean, Howard, and again, I'm going to stop because I know you guys have put way more work into this. This has just been sort of bugging me since the last
John's
meeting.
probably put more work into this. I missed the last meeting when this was brought up due to a family medical problem. A I thought about this. I don't like it. This is as chairman of the cafeteria, of the board cafeteria committee, our mission when we started this committee was to look into why the major deficits, especially last year's deficit, was so high considering we were closed due to COVID from March to June. And this interfund transfer may make sense if we had been actually watching every nickel and dime for the last, say, year or so. This may make sense in next year's budget, but at this point, I'm against it. I would recommend that my fellow board members support being against it for the reason that every time the cafeteria needs to go over budget, and I know we have to buy food, and I know we have in the past needed to go over budget, and we will in the future. Then you should come to us, the finance department, with the cafeteria head of food services, explain why, show us documentation why, and after the board reviews this, and I know it's an extra problem for the board to do, but that's the reason this committee was formed, to try to figure out what's been going on. And this is just pushing a Band-Aid on something to allow hands to be dipped in. And yes, we can check on it by looking at paper, but I want to see a year's worth of coming to the board for every penny above the budget with explanations. That's what I believe the cafeteria subcommittee was formed for, and I'm against going forward with this.
So let me just ask one sort of simple question. If let's say the cafeteria budget is $200,000 a year, and then on top of that, we've allocated these funds at 56,667 and 3,500. Why wouldn't, instead of that, why wouldn't we have 259,000 or $260,000 in the cafeteria fund? And then if am I missing something? Like,
Yes.
we don't get aid if it's over this amount, or
No, what happens?
I don't understand why.
Yeah, you have a revenue budget and you have an expenditure budget, and those two are separate and distinct. So you need to be able to have revenues to be able to keep up with your expenditures if you're going to match dollar for dollar. So what happens is this ends up being a fund that is a revenue when we end up needing it, because again, the board shared that, yes, we understand that we generally lose money, but we want to know that and understand that at the outset. We don't want to be blindsided by it and asked for it as an interfund transfer later on. So this was the mechanism to be able to do that. John, I don't know if you want to
I do want to say something.
Go ahead, John. Go ahead, John.
Whenever I have a chance. So I think this is the way to do responsible budgeting. You should not have a budget where you can hope you can do something in two notes. That isn't the way you should do it. If you know you have we know that we run the red, you have to plan it accordingly. Now that doesn't change why it's running in the red, and certainly the committees and the board will be looking at that. That doesn't stop that work at all, and that doesn't stop the work in future years. For example, you saw the example down the bottom there, minus 18,000 plus 14 plus 14 and a half, right? There's going to be times where it's over and below. And we should be asking, it doesn't really matter exactly that point either, but we should be always asking to see it's being responsibly run. They're very diligent about what they're doing there. So that's what it's all about. I mean, that's why I argued that we should be looking at this, is because it's taking taxpayer money to fund food for our students. So, it's something we keep our eyes on, and we just have to understand the problem. We're at a point where we can't fully fund our lunch program. We're a smaller size. We've got 4 buildings. most of the board wanted the 4 buildings. They cost more money. It just does.
My thing though, John, is why is it, I still don't understand why it's in a separate, like, if we almost know that the cafeteria is gonna run somewhere between 60 and 55, just judging from this equation. I know these aren't necessarily real, but the last 3 are 60, 55, and 55. Why then isn't that 56 in the cafeteria budget and not held in a side account? And then as we do exactly what we knew we were going to do and start running over, then we'll start transferring extra money in. That's the part I don't get. And if it comes in 18 grand under, hallelujah, man. We got money in the cafeteria fund. We can, but it just, that's the part that bothered me, is why is it over in this other thing? And then we know we do it every year. We know we're going to send it over. So why isn't it over there to begin with?
Because
Does
the
that
money has
make
to,
any sense? I know I'm not an accountant by any stretch. I just don't get it.
Perry, it's because the money has to come from somewhere. So if we just put it in the cafeteria fund as and just add it, there we have expenditures for which there's no revenue. So the cash has to come from somewhere, and that cash exists as the interfund transfer. That's the cash. If we just put it in the budget, it's not there. It's just a number in a budget that isn't linked to any money.
So we just basically say, oh, we got this revenue, we're going to stick it over here, and then we can use it, versus the cafeteria fund, which we have no revenue because for some accounting reason, we can't charge, we have to do it in 2 steps, basically.
Yeah, because they're 2 separate funds. The C fund is the cafeteria fund, and the A fund is the general fund.
Yeah.
So and that's why the voters approved that interfund transfer at the outset.
Again, I think you're robbing Peter to pay Paul, and you've come to us in the past, and you've had to explain why you needed this money from an interfund transfer, and I see no reason to keep things above board and transparent, ultra transparent, I should say, why you cannot continue this at least for another year, and then we study and look at this interfund transfer.
I mean, the bottom line is this isn't going to change the budget, whether the 56.6 is over there or it's over there, or it's just, we hope we've got it at the end of the year when when they come in and tell us they've overshot or undershot. It doesn't change the bottom line number, right?
Correct. And let's just remember that the problem that we're solving was the frustration that this wasn't planned at the outset and that we had to come to you in the middle of the year. So we took that concern seriously. We came up with a mechanism to not have to do that any longer. And now it's planned at the outset with an acknowledgement that, yes, we are going to be under. And if that's no longer the problem, then this is no longer the solution.
Well, Mr. Fried,
I don't understand the logic for holding them, essentially saying you get $0 until you come to us. I mean, that just seems like
it's called verify.
Well, but Howard, you can verify no matter what. What happens?
No, it's not called dip your hand into another pot to take public dollars to and then then it gets pushed over with a 128-page budget. The reason we formed this committee was to verify, because when Mr. Fried came to us last time with that shortfall last year when we were closed due to COVID, the explanation didn't make sense that, oh, well, minimum wage went up and we didn't have documentation to approve the interfund transfer.
That's not true.
complete.
That's not true. It's in the profit and loss every month. And if we have to explain it every month, we can certainly do that. But the transparency was there, and we're happy to explain that document every single month to make sure that there's understanding around it.
Then that's exactly what I'm asking for a year.
And I mean, in the bottom line, Howard, they're going to put the 56,667 plus whatever the other number. And I know those aren't probably the right numbers, but that money's going to go into an account, the general fund, whether or not we approve this new method where they can take it as they go, or it's, come and ask for it at the end of the year. It's the money's going to be in there.
Well,
My biggest thing is wanting to see how it's got, like, if we now have this budget, we have the food services budget, we have this 56,6 whatever it is that's on top of it, we have 3,500. Now I should be able to divide that by 12 months and see how is this performed, put real time, once a month. Hey, we spent 35,000, we're under by 20. The next month we spent 70,000. Well, now we're right on plan. We should be able to see something that simple. I don't want to have to read through, 30, 40 pages to find it. We should be able to see, because again, now if we were to do all this and we end up coming in $14,000 over anyway, we've got to have some way that we can at least see this as we go.
Yeah, but I think Howard's talking about process, Perry. You know what? We have these committees. We have board members on these committees. We trust our fellow board members to go on these committees, and they come back with recommendations. So right, what I'm hearing now, you got one person, Howard, who doesn't want to move it forward. John feels differently. Let's just have a vote on it, and it's either a yes or a no. I mean, listen, we're trusting people on these committees. And I think Howard's concerned with the process.
Correct.
That's
Paul.
it.
Thank you.
That's it. Simple.
Well, I mean, this really isn't a part of the budget per se. That money is going to go in there, right?
It is part.
Yep, it's going to go in one way or the other. But it's like You're coming for me now to ask for it before the storm hits the house. You want the money up front. I lean towards what Howard's saying. Let's come to us with all the documentation, and it'll be in there, and then we'll give it to you.
Well, why don't we do this? Because Howard and John were actually on that committee. I mean, the budget money, this 56,6 plus 3,500, is getting stuck in the budget someplace. The budget that's going to go to the voters. In the meantime, so we don't really have to act on this process. I'd rather have John, Howard, Brian, that cafeteria fund group sit down and go through this and see if they, and I know Howard missed the last one, but if you guys could get together and go through this and figure out, the best possible, and it doesn't have to be the full thing, just figure out something that's, because you're right, Paul, we ask people to be on these committees so that when they come back with a recommendation, we don't have to do all the work, basically.
Yep.
Paul is right. I mean, it's the process. Either and you're right that it's whether it makes sense later. And we did turn down the interfund transfer from last year, if my memory is correct, on some of that money from last year. So, and it came in later, and there was a reason that we turned down the full amount. So to try to just make it simple, to say that, well, let's put it up front. I just don't like the idea of interfund transfers when things could be built up front, then ask for more money up front. I don't understand why that can't be done.
So whatever the board's preference is, we will certainly do, but please understand that there was a depth of conversation at two of these subcommittee meetings at which Mr. Rudy attended. And because you delegated that to have that conversation. So whatever it is that the board would like to do is what we will put in the budget. But as of the February financials, we are to the plus, and I put it in black on purpose. We are actually to the plus of $25,000. So I'm describing a bit of a dilemma in what it's great, but it's an uncharacteristically good year. We know that with the students coming back, our revenue is going to decrease again because we're going to have fewer meals delivered to our students, and that's going to limit our federal reimbursement. We're not going to necessarily be able to count on the extra revenue next year, and we don't know if the USDA is going to continue to subsidize us as they've been. So the question for the board is exactly what's being discussed right now is, do we appropriate this interfund transfer to this magnitude or not? And that is guidance that we do need to be able to have from you this evening, because we have a budget that we have to finalize for your adoption.
Well, then I'd like to poll the board. I'd like to poll the board on the rest of the board members that we have not heard from on their feelings on whether we pull this off this budget or move forward with it.
Yeah, and one other thing just to consider as you contemplate that. So right now, and you'll see it a little bit further on in the presentation, we have a revenue budget that doesn't exist. Actually, just today, I've learned at 4:12 that this morning there's a printed version of the new legislation in a budget bill. So we don't know what our revenues are going to be. But we would imagine that it's going to be greater than what the executive runs gave us. So right now we are exactly at a 1.35, which is our tax levy limit. Anything that comes out of that budget is going to go underneath the tax levy limit. And then the board would have to decide if it would want to levy less than a 1.35 and decrease its base for future years. So just keep that in the back of your mind as you navigate this question.
Okay. So what's the rest of the board think?
It sounds to me like we have it set up that way because we need to set it up that way as far as the interfund. So, to John's point, we can only cut so much to bring it down, but to Howard's point, we should be kind of taking a look at it, as we move forward. I don't think Perry's idea of taking the three numbers, dividing it by 12 is that outlandish. Maybe it's not specifically that way. And, you get a report like this on a monthly basis, just saying where we're at. So we can all be updated on the numbers, but it sounds like we kind of have to do the interfund transfers because we don't, we need to, check the appropriate boxes, but I don't know. It sounds to me that, because we have 4 schools, because we have the expenses we have, we can't not feed the children, of course. These are expenses we're going to have. So, even if we look at it every month, are there places we could cut to make it better? I don't know. I mean, I'll pass it off to the other board members, but.
What's the answer? What's your answer? Leave it out or add it in?
I would say I would lean John's way of doing it. However, I do think we should review it on a monthly basis to see where we're at.
I'd like to see it on a monthly basis where it's all going, why, what's happening and why.
But put the money in there. No.
Dear Howard.
Okay.
So if we don't put the money in now, what happens?
If we don't put the money in now, we end up where we were, needing to come back to the board mid-year asking for additional money, which was just a pain point for some board members. But that's generally where we would be. And it would be money that would otherwise have gone to fund balance because it wouldn't have been budgeted. So we would hope we would have to have it because it would be an unbudgeted expense at that point.
So you know the savings account, Jen, that we keep talking about?
Yeah.
Basically, that money comes from stuff that we thought it was going to be X and it was Y. So we put that money in there. If we don't budget this money, then we have, and I guess we can't put it in the cafeteria fund directly. So we'd have to budget it in this other fund. If we don't put it in there, then we just kind of got to go find it, and that's less money that we can put in the reserve fund.
Guys, responsible budgeting is not hoping you have the money later in the year. That's not the way you do it. I'll just point out to you, be cautious there. Typically, we'll be able to find something, but you never know. So,
Honestly, I mean, I'd rather abstain because I can't see putting the money in and then this, like, it's just and I know we're going to get monthly reports and everything, but if we're going to do it anyway, I really am split on this.
Well, you can put the money in the fund and it can't be moved until the board authorizes it. I mean, that's basically what we're doing now, except for the fact that we're not actually budgeting it. We're just, hoping for the best. But there's no reason we couldn't, I'm sort of asking this. There's no reason we couldn't put the money in the fund so we know it's budgeted, but make sure that we're reviewing it every month and that we've got some checkpoint date of here's where, you guys have seen me, I'm running 10 grand a month over, I'm already at a 60, can I have 60 grand out of that thing and then transfer it in? I don't see why that's not an option.
Yeah, so that's not how it happens. If it's in the interfund transfer and it's approved budget by the board and it's approved by the budget, then by the voters, then it comes into the interfund. It's interfund meaning moving from the general fund into the cafeteria fund. So it happens as a result of putting it in that line. But again, if we didn't need it, it's going to come back because we don't carry a fund balance in the cafeteria fund.
So if we put this money in a budget, it's just automatically going to be there for the cafeteria.
Unless you direct me.
So somehow
if you're directing.
But somehow.
To budget for it elsewhere in the budget and over budgeting other lines.
No, I thought we were saying before that, I mean, that if you put it in some fund and the minute it's approved, it goes into the cafeteria fund. Isn't that what I was asking for before? Is that it's in the cafeteria fund and not sitting in some side fund?
It is in the cafeteria fund on the revenue side. So part of so listen, there's a lot of complexity to this. So you might want to even join a subcommittee meeting because there is a lot and it's a lot to learn and there's a lot to know. If there's greater conversation, we could do whatever you'd like. We could have a tutorial at a general board meeting, or you can just leave it to the subcommittee. But there's
but you need this. You just said you need this decision tonight.
Yeah, you're right.
So Jen, did you want to finish your thoughts?
Not particularly. Right. I mean, if the money is going to come, if it has to get paid either way, is it better to have the money in the budget? I would say yes, but at the same time, I don't want to put the money in there. I mean, I don't know if I'm wording this correctly, but I think I'm really like on half on what Howard is saying and half on what John is saying. If it's going to get paid anyway, but I don't want to move the money.
You don't pay the bills out of the general fund. Look at the state of New York. And I say that very loosely. I'm no Einstein with numbers, and I don't claim to be. But I know enough that from working with the state, that the state goes to the general fund to grab out whatever they can to make up shortfalls in other budgets. And from my background, by allowing the cafeteria fund into this interfund transfer is the same thing of going into a slush fund. So it can transfer directly out without any other step, meaning us being a board, without Brian coming back to us to say, we need this because we need to buy, the price of chopped meat went up. And if the price of chopped meat went up, well, that's a great reason. Okay, we have money. We've always had money. I don't want to hear if the money exists. That's never happened before. And realistically, I doubt if that's ever going to happen. But anything can happen. So it's just not good business from a neophyte in math that I am. If my pocket is empty, I don't go out and spend money. I don't raid the cookie jar that was supposed to be meant for my son's, I don't know, skateboard to go pay for something because I ran short that week. And that's exactly, I can't make it any simpler than that.
But Howard, isn't he budgeting it by telling us right now that he's going to need this money?
No, I don't believe so, because he doesn't know exactly how much he needs. Everything's an or guesstimate, even though it's not a real word. It's an estimate of what we may need. Like Brian says, and of course Brian will correct me if I'm wrong, that if we have we're in the black right now. Wonderful. It's never happened before, but he doubts it will continue, and it probably won't continue. So if we're in the black, this whole discussion is moot. So,
well, it's a different circumstance of why we're in the black right now.
I agree.
Which is going to end soon. Look, I don't know if there's a perfect answer for this, but I mean, he is coming to us saying he's going to need X amount. He can't put X amount into the actual fund because you need checks and balances. So, I mean, that's where it seems simple just to throw $56,000 into the general budget, but it's not that simple.
It's too simple, Chris.
And then if we don't give it to him, what happens?
He comes back like he has been, asking for it. It's a way of them. It's a way, in my mind, let's put it that way, of the cafeteria of being even more, cognizant of spending money.
I get it. They have to be held accountable. I understand that.
Right.
But we're asking them to give us a budget, and that's what he's doing. But I don't know. If we say no, you can't have that money, Brian.
Well,
kids don't get fed. I mean, I don't.
Well, no,
they get fed.
I don't think it's like that. I think it's like this. If the kids will get fed, and then we'll pay it like we've done in the past. And if the committee wasn't able to get it done or come to the, this is why we get nothing done. Let's just go around and take a vote. Vote no. Vote no. If 4 vote yes and 3 vote no,
right,
it doesn't
and that's
go
the
in.
end of it.
Just do it. Let's just stop the nonsense. You got 2 guys on the committee. Put the vote up. It's a yes or no. I'm saying no.
All right.
Howard, you saying no? Howard, you saying no?
Yeah,
be clear on what
I'm saying no. That's it. Just go around. Jen, you want to say yes? Say yes.
Hang on.
Come on.
No
man.
is
ridiculous.
basically leave it like it's been for the last 10 years.
At least for another year till we see how things play out. Now that we have a board oversight.
Okay, so that's a no vote is to leave it like it is, at least for another year. A yes vote is to do it with the additional monthly, this is why I'm over, I'm under, reporting. All right, so Howard, you're a no?
Correct.
Paul?
No.
Claudia?
No.
Jen?
No.
Chris?
Want to go John first? Yes.
John?
Yes.
Okay. And that don't matter.
Perry, you should say something.
Yeah. For the
Yeah.
record.
No, I'll tell you, I vote yes, and it's because I honestly I still don't know how to run this thing. It's we're gonna take a shot at putting some money over here. It's going to automatically transfer, which is basically, other than there's actually money in the budget to do it, it's what we've been doing forever. You know, oh, we missed by 60. Oh, we missed by 45. The whole thing is messy. It's just messy. But I guess we're 4-3, so let's we'll leave it like it is till next year.
I will pull that item out of the budget for the final budget before it's presented to you. So with regard to your proposed proposition for number 2 for the annual meeting, I understand that there were some questions about this, and I just wanted to take some time to give you some reasoning and share with you a little bit about the history of this fund. So this is the proposed proposition that you saw at least at the last board meeting. And we are recommending that we increase that fund by $4 million. And again, that just means that we are able to go up to a $10 million from the current level of 6. We are able to go up to $10 million. That's what we would be asking the voters for permission to do. We're at approximately, I'm going to say 5.6 million right now. So this is the proposition.
Yeah, so
that we're talking about, and here's some of the history on
so I'll just give you a quick, and I brought this up at the agenda meeting because I just thought we should talk more about it. We've been talking for years about a long-term financial plan. We had this $4 million limit, I think, is at least as long as I've been on the board. I don't know how long it was before that.
Harry, is it okay with you if I share the history about it and go into it? I think I may deal with some of your concerns on there. So in terms of our own authority, are you able to see this screen?
Yep.
Okay, so our authority is granted to us by the Office of the State Comptroller. This is a reserve fund manual, and to page 27 and 28. So it's Education Law 3651 that allows us to utilize a capital reserve fund as a tool for saving taxpayer money. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past and understood at different levels is we have that 4% cap on our unrestricted reserve. And we don't want to go afoul necessarily of, and there are some districts, many districts, in fact, who choose to do that, go over the 4% unreserved fund balance. So what we have sought to do is to have as many tools in our quiver to be able to reserve and protect taxpayers from expenses that will ultimately or may ultimately come their way, whether it be a tax certiorari reserve or an insurance reserve or an ERS reserve. So this is the authority that's granted to us. And it's a little unique in that the voters have to approve the creation of the reserve, and they also have to approve the expenditure of the reserve. So like right now, that $5.7 million that's in the budget, that's in that reserve. So when we do have a plan, when we do approve an RFP and get our new architects online, and they assist us with the building condition survey and with the creation of the 5-year plan, we already have $5.7 million saved. So at no cost to the taxpayers, we would be able to do at least a $5.7 million project. But this is where our authority comes from. It comes from the Education Law 3651. So we have the permission from our taxpayers to be able to raise that money. So in terms of the history, so we created this reserve shortly after we finished our last project, actually slightly before everything was completed, because we created this reserve to go into effect in 2012 to 2013. And at that point, we sought to be able to get up to $2 million. Then in the district vote of May 2015, we sought to increase by $2 million for a total of $4 million. And then in 2019, we did request of our voters and get approval to save up to $6 million. So that was also another increase. And of course, now we're recommending that we do be able to go up to $10 million. So I ask that keep in mind that this proposition was approved by our district's council. Margot did review it. As we talked about also already, this keeps the district from being in violation of real property tax law, section 1318, because we would not go over the 4%, and it's a great tool for saving. And if it was the board's decision to do so, this proposition would be approved by the board on the 20th at the next board meeting. So I heard what you said, Perry, just about the long range plan. And I'd like to address that a tiny bit.
Yeah.
So
well, why don't you let me finish my original point, which is I have no problem with there being a capital reserve. I think it's great. We've been talking about having a long-term financial outlook for quite some time. We went to our voters and it went from 2 to 4 over a fairly distant period of time. It went from 4 to 6, and like overnight we had it at 6. I mean, not just the account being that big, but filled. And now we want to go up another 4 to 10. And I mean, I don't know what we're basing it on. Hey, we went up, I don't know if we're saying that we've, it's basically we've more than doubled our capital reserve fund if we did this, the size of our capital reserve fund in like 3 years. And I just don't know what we're basing this on. I know we want to do, a large capital project. I think the fact that they let us do this is great. I just don't know, and it's what I'm uncomfortable with, and I wanted to, just toss it out to the board. I don't know what we're basing this on. Are we gonna, if we get 10 million this year, do we go back next year and ask for 16? At what point does the voters have the right to go, wait a minute, how are you, where's the money coming from for this? Why, how'd you go from 4 to 6 basically overnight? So that's my problem, is I just don't know. And again, we keep talking about this year after year, is we need a long-term financial plan that shows us where we're going to be. And if we want to look at the cost of whatever, we want to look at how fast we could populate this while minimizing the impact on the voters. All those things should be addressed in a long-term financial plan before we just keep increasing the size of this reserve, or not the size, but the capacity of it. So that's what, and I brought this up during the agenda meeting just for the board members to, I'd just like to be able to have this discussion. If everybody on the board is okay with it, and they're sort of okay with how we get there, then I'm good.
So Perry, I just want, I know you shared that we've been saying this for years, but I just want to remind the board and the public that 2 years ago, in April of 2019, we did a long-range plan. We had a full long-range plan, and it was presented to us in April of 2019. And then after that, 2019, and this took months to create, then we had 2 years of a pandemic. So in 2019, we had a 5-year long-range plan that was in place and created. So I just want to remind the board that if that wasn't satisfactory, and yes, we absolutely do need to keep up with it for sure, but it hasn't been like years where we did not do a long-range plan. This was just done 2 years ago, followed by 2 years of a pandemic.
Right.
And the significance about that is that we have had incredible amounts of money that has gone unspent because we haven't spent it on certain things, whether it be transportation or otherwise. So these are real reasons why we do have much more fund balance than we would otherwise. So that's
and the agreement we had when we did this financial plan was we were going to roll a year off, roll a year on. And we haven't even seen that plan, updated or anything since it was originally created and presented. My bigger thing though is with this, is this something the board wants to move forward on? Based on we're not sure what we're getting from we're not sure where we're going to get money. We're not sure on a lot of these things. Is this something the board feels comfortable moving forward? And if it is, you're good. It feels like one of those things that we're just kind of, well, we got 6, why don't we go for 10? So I'll put it out to the board. If you guys are cool, not even necessary to say anything, we'll just move on.
I have a question, Brian. There are other reserves we could put excess funds into, correct? This is not the only one, right? For
sure.
Okay.
Ryan, what was the point of going from 2 to 4 to 6 and then jumping to 10? Like, would that percentage keep us below the threshold, or would 8 put us below the threshold?
No, I would say 8 certainly would. It was just a matter. So if we're planning out and we're thinking about the timeline that it would be in order to go from RFP to hiring architects using the subcommittee, facilities subcommittee on an evaluation process, to interviews, to getting the doing a BCS, to getting a full capital project in the pipeline with approval of voters, with the board's discussion around what they would like to see, you're really 3 years out. So minimally 3 years out. So it was an effort to not have to go out to the voters another time, because they would have already have approved it up to 10 million. And it doesn't mean we have to use up to 10 million, but we would absolutely be able to go lower. It was just an acknowledgement that that cycle and many, well, John's been through it in depth. That cycle is a very long cycle with a lot of conversation, and I would say it's probably minimally a 3-year cycle for a considerable project. So it was 3 years of potential savings. Well,
how quick do you think you can get it to 10?
Well, listen, so we've trimmed our budget considerably. We've taken a lot of money out of our to get to where we are right now with all the staffing that we're proposing to add at only a 1.35 tax levy limit. The amount of fund balance that we're going to be creating each year, unless we're in a pandemic, is going to be reduced.
Hey, Brian, for this money that's jumping from this to up to 10, does that also include like helping to like hire teachers and aides and things like that? Is that part of this budget, or is that's something completely different?
So thanks for that question. Let me clarify. So just because we're saying that we go from 4 to 10, it doesn't mean that that ever happens. What this proposition does is it grants the authority from our voters to say that, listen, if you have leftover money, we are telling you, Board of Education, that you can stick it in the capital reserve if you would like to. That has nothing to do with a budget to budget where you're going to vote to approve a budget. That's separate and distinct from that.
So no, so this money is not towards teachers. It's not, it can't be used anything. Is this just a big amount of money? And then it can be pulled? Like, I don't understand. Can you
Nope,
clarify?
once it goes into a capital reserve, it must be used.
Oh,
for
capital reserve.
expenditures. Yep.
Okay,
And then the voters have to approve the expenditure as well.
got it. Okay.
And again, that would be on a one-time purchase basis, of course, like where staff, you actually get staff into your budget because it's a recurring cost.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to bring it up because it's one of those things that just, I don't know, I wasn't comfortable with. So if you guys are all good, we'll move on.
And when do you think you could be able to, and I understand, I'm just asking you, update the 5-year plan?
When can the 5-year plan be updated? That's a good question. And I don't have an answer for you right now. We have to finish out this year and we can start working on that, and maybe we could work on that and be able to have it done for the fall, but certainly by the end of the fall. Yep.
Okay.
So then we have some incomplete item. I'm sorry.
No, I'm trying to find the agenda again. There we go.
So then we have some incomplete items in the budget and where we are right now, and one of them is revenues. So I already shared with you that we don't have a state budget yet, and it was just this morning that the budget bill was printed, but we don't have any aid runs, so we don't know what our actual aid numbers are going to be. So we're creating an expenditure budget without a full knowledge of the revenues, and that's not a horrible thing, just because in this instance, it's probably going to be true that we would get more aid and not less. So so we should generally be okay there, but know that things are going to change over the next 2 weeks. So we just closed on last week on the refinancing of our bonds. And
Brian, sorry, do you want to share a screen? Because we're not seeing anything if you're sharing a screen.
Thank you.
Yep.
How's now?
There you go.
We good now? Great.
Yeah, all good.
Thanks, Claudia. Our budget now needs to be updated to indicate this, and it's also going to change our tax levy limit. So you'll remember that when we have when we calculate our tax levy limit, we have an exclusion for our debt service. It's our capital exclusion. So now, because we refinanced, we're going to have less of a payment. So we're going to have less of an exclusion. So our tax levy limit is going to go down now, and you can anticipate seeing that in the on the 20th and what that's going to actually look like, because now that this has been closed, I'll be able to do a recalculation on that tax levy limit. And we already have the decision on our interfund transfer. So we have next steps for this evening are a final budget review with an opportunity for me to answer your questions and the rest of the administrative team to be able to answer any questions that you might have. Receive feedback tonight about any additions and or deletions that you would like to see in the final budget. I will work on that between now and the 20th, and then we will complete the budget with the property tax report card for your approval on the 20th.
Okay. Any feedback for Brian?
Yes, I can start.
All right.
All right, Brian, you want the numbers for the, I'm looking at the administrative component that you were so kind enough to get me a hard copy of so I could peruse. At A1010, which is the Board of Education.
Yes.
Okay, I don't know if, well, most people don't know what I'm talking about because it's not up. Okay. It shows, thank you. Let's see where it is. 1010. Okay.
Brian, what page are we on to?
This is currently.
Actually, I'm on
one.
page, I would tell you, page, go to page 4, please.
Yep.
Okay, I noticed that you have us going up $5,408. Two-part question. One, of course, why are we going up? And secondly, in 2000 and 2001, we had no trips. We did not attend any functions through NISBA. So what happens to the money that we didn't spend?
Yeah, I'm glad you asked. So that's an exact example of money that's unspent in a pandemic and money that goes to fund balance and money that the board will have to decide what it would like to do with at the end of the year, whether it go into a capital reserve or towards the 4% or any of the tools that we're trying to create. So that's some of the money that wouldn't be spent during a pandemic.
What about the change?
Yeah. This is in this line, you'll see the same 5408, and that's because we are seeking to increase our board docs subscription to the professional version for greater functionality.
Understood then.
Thank you. Howard, let me ask a question about that.
Sure.
No, never mind. No, never mind. Something different. No.
Okay. No, thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. I did miss that. Thank you. And to most of the questions that I probably had you answered. What do I have here? Well, why don't we just jump to the, well, instead of going through the administrative component, why don't I cut to the chase, I guess, right? Let's go to the personnel assistant. A 1430-160, page 15.
Sure. And just so you all know, because I presented the first half of the budget, if it's highlighted in yellow, that represents a change from what was originally presented. I wanted to make sure that that popped out at you.
Yep, I did get that, but concerning the personnel assistant, my major concerns are as follows. One, if this was a considered item by administration, by your office and or the superintendent's office, why wasn't it proposed months ago when we could have discussed reasons for it and or against it? But let's start with that question.
So typically we would talk about new staffing. So it was the same as the rest of the new staffing that we started discussing as we engaged in our budget discussions.
Okay, but you see, this is the first time, I understand your reasoning for secretarial changes because that's been brought to the board's attention before. It is known that we do have issues, and of course, I will not go into any because I don't really know any off the top of my head with HR or personnel. Another thing is because of that, there is also a report, and I will not go into that the board is still awaiting to see that does deal with things with personnel. So I don't understand why we need this item at this time. And I would like to have a board discussion well, first I wouldn't mind hearing your explanation on why we should have it, or the superintendent's explanation on why we should have it. And then I guess we should discuss this as a board on whether we should move forward with allowing this position to be in the budget.
From my understanding that this position has been needed for quite a while. that Envision or Finance Manager was adopted a number of years ago, and we are not using it to its capacity. So this is more of a clerical position of entering certification information rather than diving into hard copies all of the time, and housing a lot of our HR information so that we can share it among the departments and share it with NYSED, New York State Education Department. So this is not a director that we're looking for. This is a very important piece to whatever we do with HR, whether we have a director of HR or we have a specific person who is coordinating or running HR. But this particular person or this position is needed just so that we can be efficient and effective in our practices with the data that we are using to inform our decisions. I don't know, Cheryl, if you want to speak more to it.
Can I ask a question, Laura? You mentioned 2 software packages.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which ones did you just mention?
Envision and Finance Manager.
Okay, they both have to do with the business department. Those are both pieces of software that have nothing to do with human resources.
No, that's false, Paul.
That's incorrect.
There's a whole human resources side of Envision. There's like 5 different modules.
Mm-hmm.
I was asking the superintendent a question. Hold on a second. Thanks. Just go back to the superintendent. Laura, you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah, so just explain then, I use both of those tools on a daily basis. I don't use them for HR. So I'm gonna want to see the component then of how it's going to be used with HR, not just for the business office side, before I even put that through. Okay.
Sure.
So, okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I also put it in my weekly. I put sort of some basic ideas around that, so I can share that, of course, with you. And then I have a sort of the civil service position of what this person would be doing. But I also think that boots on the ground, Cheryl can really speak to the need for this person. And so if you're okay with her, allowing her to just sort of give an overview and some background as to why we're proposing this.
And I think the board just wants, I'm not speaking to everybody, we just want to make sure we have the right to question it. So people shouldn't get angry or defensive. Here's the bottom line. We're not going to add another business assistant person. If it needs to be for the HR, we want to make sure that people are going to the right spots. So we have every right to question that and what they're going to be doing. Because, we just don't want it to be where it's being labeled as one thing and put in some other basket. Okay, you understand?
Oh, absolutely, Paul. Understood.
Okay.
And really,
Thank you.
In my in sort of
And-
description,
Yeah.
that this person
Thank
would be housed in the district office with Cheryl and under my supervision.
Can I ask, is this a full-time employee?
Yes.
Why do we need to go from 0 to 1 in 1 year? Why demand has gone that high, that sky high in a year?
It's been a cumulative, John, from what I'm understanding, that this has been building up over years. It's not new information that we're uploading, but it's new information and then a lot of historical data that needs to be uploaded so that we are more efficient, that we're running more of a well-oiled machine. Right now, we're creating spreadsheets that are redundant when we know that this system can do it for us, but we're sort of putting band-aids and plugging holes while we're trying to get it up to speed. And it's just not possible. Cheryl or anybody in the business office or any other offices, the plates are full. So
when did we install Envision?
I don't know the year, Cheryl, do you know?
So I started in 2002. So I think that they brought it in around 2000, and I may not be exact, but it was somewhere around there.
Because it's fun. I mean, especially if it's been that long. And again, I'm all about it, John, but I don't ever remember a discussion of basically needing staff for this software. Well, I wasn't near there when it was installed, but it's the first we're hearing that we need a person, because basically it sounds like Envision's not really being used for HR. It's spreadsheets and paper and other stuff.
Why not
Do
a
you
secretary
mind if
position?
do you mind if I just address this because I work with it all the time, and I have for the past 20 years. So
Okay.
if you don't mind, I'm happy to explain how we use the HR. But if you don't want me to, then I just want to know if you want that or not. But
Who
I just want to
specifically
give you
is
good
this personal-
information.
Who specifically, Cheryl, or I mean, Laura, Cheryl, whoever can answer it, will this person, for this personal assistant be reporting to? I looked at the hierarchy chart and I'm not sure, like, I don't know if I'm reading that wrong.
It's, well, the position would be housed in the district office under my supervision, and Cheryl and this person would be working closely.
So this person is going to report to you and to Cheryl.
Correct.
Is this person a unionized position?
Hmm?
Yes or no?
Yeah, they would. So it's a civil service position, Howard. And so I don't know actually with the union. I think we would have to talk to them on whether that position would be considered union or confidential. I would steer
Because
probably confidential.
Because again, we should
HR.
know before we approve something, because since Cheryl is the district clerk, this person then technically would have access to could have access to district information.
No.
And not knowing whether it's a union position or a confidential position when you're proposing this, all this should have been worked out beforehand.
So do you want to have an understanding of how it would work with the finance, or I don't know what?
Sure, I would like to hear the
Yeah,
HR.
yeah.
All right, so so finance manager, which is now Envision, is very much an HR system. So you have an HR and then it rolls into payroll, and then rolls out to things like New York State for reporting. And so when everything that we house for our employees is in Envision. So as soon as you say that we're allowed to appoint someone, that person gets put into Envision. And that system houses several different areas that we can keep track of information. We can put our teacher certifications, we can track tenure, we can track their health insurance. There's a bunch of information that we can track. And then we also can keep their APPR scores in there. And then there's information that we take from that system where a report is pulled from Envision and it's sent to SED for reporting.
Cheryl, what's the difference between that and the teach account? For each individual professional, each person has a teach account with everything that you said is listed in their teach account. That if I want to go on New York State and get their social security number, I punch that in often when I'm hiring people, and I see all the things that you just mentioned already on there.
Yep. So, and that's a convenient tool for when we're about to hire someone. We want to know that information, and we want to use that tool throughout. Like when if we're looking at someone, is their certification ready to expire? What cert are they? So we can make sure we're bringing people in the right place. But in Envision, there's a spot for us to put that information in there so that I don't have to continuously toggle between my HR system and teach. I can, once I bring them in, because in Envision, I have to put their teach account in there, their number, because we have to report it to SED. I have to pull pieces of information from teach, right?
I know, I do it, I use both.
So we can house that information in there, and it's convenient because if I need to get a report to say Caroline, who's saying, who has this certificate? I can go to HR if we have that information in there, and we can find it without trying to figure out who might have it and then maybe pull that person in.
So how much of this stuff is already in Envision? Or is it you know, we basically the whole point of this person is to actually get on with it.
So there's some projects that this person would be taking on right from the beginning. And there's some projects that have been started and were not able to be maintained. But when we brought on finance manager, we were not utilizing it to this capacity because we didn't need to at that point. We weren't,
My thing though, Cheryl, is really, you know, if we put this system in and we've started loading these things, at some point we should have said, Jesus, we can't keep this up to date without people. And, you know, that would have been the point to come in and say, you know, we want to move forward with Envision because it'll do all these things for the district, but we need, you know, another person. You know, I know I sound like a broken record, but it's a plan. You know, before you start loading stuff in there and then realize you're overwhelmed, and I'm not talking about you, Cheryl, I'm talking about, you know, in general, before you start loading stuff in, before you start, you know, trying to get all this stuff done and then realize you're over your head, this all should have been planned out and presented to the board years ago. And then, you know, then we could have looked at that person. But now to be, you know, sort of, we're over our heads and we'd like to keep going, but we can't. You know, because I just feel like we've been here before. You know, oh, we need this person to enter data, and then that person goes and well, we need a person to enter data. We need a person to enter data. We keep it feels like we keep doing the same thing because we've got all these disparate data systems, and I don't know. I just this is where, you know, when I harp on plans, this is exactly why.
Well, and I do understand that, Perry, but I will say in the 3 years that I've been sitting in this office, I have asked for help from the previous superintendent, letting him know that I needed extra help in that office. And I can't control that it didn't go anywhere. And so, you know, that's all I can say about that. But
but even before this came forward, you know, once the, you know, really we see it as this, as we're putting a salary in our budget. You know, we should have seen this, I don't know, last year and said, hey, you know, we went forward with, you know, 82 people that we needed to do, and I'm exaggerating, a whole bunch of people to do AABB and, you know, all these extra people. We should have come in and said, hey, we've been trying to get this thing off the ground for 3 years. It's going to take an extra person because they got to do this and this and this and this. What do you think about putting that in next year's budget? And not, you know, hey, I put this in the budget. You guys okay with that? You know, and now we're trying to figure out even what the person does and how long the system's been in. Anyway.
Yeah, and I think, Perry, too, it's been a little hard during the pandemic and really trying to figure out who we need. We're trying to be fiscally responsible. We're trying to have a plan of action. But in the last 10 months, year, we've been trying to survive, you know, a pandemic and hire people so that we can keep our kids and our staff healthy and safe. And that to think of adding another person was really hard for us, or teachers or anybody, because we thought we were going to be cut 20% in the fall. Then we thought we were going to be cut 20% again in February. So we were just sort of in survival mode. And now that things are leveling out, there's some opportunities. We can meet the tax cap. These are things that we never thought we could have a kindergarten. And now it has presented itself. We needed more special ed teachers and aides, and now we're able to do that. So we were able to add another monitor so that one person didn't have to cover 4 departments. So personnel is just another layer of support for the district office. So not things that
I get it. It's more about coming to us like from the beginning. You know, you came to us with, we set what do you need to make this AABB stuff work, make hybrid work? You guys built a plan, you came in, you said, I got to get all these people, I need this type, this type, this type, because, and we proved it. And, this is one of those things where we should have just come forward and said, look, I don't know how many of you remember, but we've had this system in for 20 years. It was going to do all these things, and it's not going to do any of it. In fact, we're going to shut it off if we can't get a person to help us with this thing, because it's just a waste. I mean, that's the way to present it. And then we take it to, okay, Brian, we need this person in the budget, but it's obvious we can't support everything. Can we cut something else down? Can we keep the lawnmower another year? Whatever the hell the right answers are. But seeing these requests in the budget, it needs to be handled differently.
I think too, that maybe to our fault, we really just put the hybrid and our kids first. We wanted them to come back, and that the support that we weren't getting in our offices, we put that on the back burner or the middle burner, and we just absorbed it and just kept working and working and working extra hours, doing more work, because our eye was on the prize in getting our students back, and that these other positions to take
but this has been going on for 20 years. I mean, if we put this system in around 2000, this thing has been dusted off. It's probably running on magnetic tape. It's so old. We should have. This is not yes, the pandemic, but we also, you asked us for all these people and then you couldn't get them. There was a perfect opportunity to come in and say, hey, I remember I told you I needed 5 new cleaners. Hey, is there any chance that, we've got this project? It's a dog. We can't figure out how to get it off the ground. We just have to do a better job of planning.
That's kind of what I was trying to get at when I was asking what's new about this. And I think the answer is there's nothing new. We've always needed this. That's what you're saying? And we've managed to scrimp by for some years.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And so for for a part of the project where we started updating in Envision, at one point when Lila was gone, we had her come back and she worked on some of that project. So we had someone who was only here for a short time period to try to get us to a certain spot with information in the system.
Right.
And so,
So there hasn't been a full-time person of different people contributing to this, right? It's been a fraction of a full-time person working on this realistically.
yep.
So maybe it's more economical to do for a full-time person. I don't know if it's half a person. I don't know if it's quarter or 3/4. I don't know what it is, but it's less than a person, because we've been tucking it or not doing it the way we want, I suppose. Right?
Well, and remember, there's all this stuff was done with spreadsheets and paper and all that.
Yeah.
So that's a headcount savings there of people that don't have to do that anymore. They just push a button and it comes shooting out of whatever the.
And I suspect there's other places in the district that the same thing's happening.
Not with this.
So back to.
Not with Envision, but in other places, there's people that are just can't. Maybe in Carolyn's neck of the woods, they're the understaffed. So I'm just wondering. This is the most critical of all the needs you folks are saying. Laura, you can answer that if you want.
I think it's very important. I mean, there are lots of important pieces that we could be bringing in. So we have to make choices. And so this is a choice that we're making because it's in need. We made a choice to bring on another senior typist because we had one person who was working those 4 departments. That definitely supports the curriculum and instruction and PPS office, as well as the technology office, as well as our food service office, as well as our facilities. That move helped relieve some pressure on one person and distributed the work now again among 2 people. So we're trying.
But Laura, that took me to make a comment about that, to get that move. That didn't come forward. weeks or months or years prior to that. I mean, how long has Cheryl been doing that job? It was me that brought that up a couple of times ago to say, hey, why does this person doing 4 different jobs?
Yeah, and we've been talking about that previously. You're absolutely right. But we've been trying to figure out, I don't know, have all of the historical information or the background of why decisions were made. I don't know if they were economical. I don't know if they were for what reasons, but here we are trying to move forward.
Well, maybe we should wait till we have the reorganization discussion and tie this piece to that instead of putting the cart before the horse. Have the reorganizational, proposal first from you, Laura, and then see how this position ties into reorganizing the offices.
Well, I think the problem is it would mean a year and a half of the system falling apart. I mean, if we don't put it in the budget, we're not necessarily
No. I'm saying, aren't we getting? No. I'm saying that aren't we going to get a proposal or a conversation about reorganization? Okay.
Yeah.
So why would I put in a person without knowing the other parts to that reorganization when, that could be part of this conversation? I mean, isn't that coming forward soon, that conversation? And the reorg plan, it's not going to be in 3 months. That's going to be like,
No.
I thought we were doing that tonight in the executive session.
I think we've got some other stuff to take care of, but it's not 3 months either, Paul. But I think
no, I'm not saying to wait on it. I'm just saying that one conversation has a lot to do with the other.
Yeah.
If you're reorganizing something and you're going to restructure things, why would you jump to put a person in a position? I just don't. I think it's foolish right now to do it right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
by the way, we asked for the 12th. Tonight's the 12th for a partial reorganizational plan or comments to come on. It's like that's part of the deal. That's what's going on. It's just.
I agree with Paul. I said this last board meeting, it's putting things horse before the cart, and the cart before the horse. And why does this have to be a quote personnel assistant instead of a senior typist or a data entry clerk or some other position? Laura, you're in the job of education and you do it very well. Why isn't the board being educated?
In what way, Howard?
Why this position instead of other positions, other titles, civil service titles, or titles we can hire? Why couldn't we just hire another senior typist? Why couldn't we hire a data entry clerk?
Because if you look at the if you look at the civil service description, which I can share, it fits the job that we need done. So that's why it's the proposition of a personnel assistant. This person has the skills and the knowledge to fill that gap that we have in the district office.
Thank you. See, I didn't know that before you just told me.
So, and again, maybe I could probably am wrong again. But just because we put the money in the budget doesn't mean we have to, July 1st hire somebody. Right? I mean, what we're talking about is budget here, not approval to hire someone. Or is that automatic if we approve the budget?
No, not automatic. It could be budgeted and then the board would appoint at a later time.
So, I mean, I think one of the, the discussion about the new organization is, and over here is the person that we need, this person, we're going to replace this one. We're going to put this one over here. We're going to flatten these down. That discussion can happen, I would think. What we need to do is be prepared to put a budget number out for the public to vote on in May, a month from now. Getting the detailed discussion of what the organization is going to look like from top to bottom, we should be able to do that the next April meeting or the first meeting in May. Although maybe that is the election. I don't know. But, you know, I think that the key here is whether or not we want to support putting that money in the budget. And it sounds like to me that it's a, you know, if Cheryl's been trying to do this for 19 years and has been cobbling it together, and we're still, you know, our HR system is somehow running on spreadsheets and you know, flat files and PDF files. You know, it sounds like something we really need to do. It's just, how is it done? What level is it? Where does it report? Where should it report? Should there be a director of HR? You know, all those things.
That goes back
That's
to
my take.
reorganization. That goes back to the reorg. I don't want to keep going round and around, but if there's a person that might be in charge of HR starting July 1st, if the reorg goes through and it's approved and however we do it, that person may want to use Cheryl or use another person, or not even having it. I don't know, but I'm just saying, I think they're directly linked conversations, and I don't agree with, like, you know, I just don't agree with, you know, there could be a total different person in charge of HR or somebody else that's more, you know, whatever. I don't know. Maybe they want to do it differently. Maybe they don't want to have a.
No, and Paul, you're saying the exact same thing, I think. I mean, right now, I think we should put the money in because it's obvious it can't stay the way it is. Something's got, if this is our HR system and we've been gigged about our HR system because it's paper and you know, back of napkins and whatever the hell else goes on, and we need to do something about it, then we need to put the money in the budget.
Teachers,
where
I don't see
that,
money
you know,
going into
when
the
that,
budget to hire teachers. It's like today, this is the most important thing to one person. Tomorrow, there's another most important thing. There is no procedure. There's no anything. It's slop upon slop. And I hate to say it, but it's what it is. It's last minute stuff thrown in our face that we have to react or not react to. And this is not the way you run a candy shop.
I have a couple simple, brief questions, kind of more factual things.
John.
One question is, would the person be doing? Is the person being brought on just for this task? Just for this task, like 100% is this task data entry or not?
So they would bring that system up to date and maintain it.
Yep.
And they would do the civil service section. They would take civil service, which I do. So when we're looking at titles, I look at the titles for people. I, you know, work with civil service closely. So they would do that as well. And then there's other projects, and I wasn't prepared to talk about this right now, but there's definitely other projects that they would be doing in that position.
So it's not entirely for this position. Let me ask a question to anybody.
All HR related though, John. Everything would be related to HR.
So this is a can, not should kind of question. Can other providers provide this service, like a BOCES or something else that provides? Maybe we get a partial person on this table.
No.
It can only be done in-house.
We need them to be in-house to do it. So it's really about our employees' records, and all of those records are housed in my office, and our office, in the district office with Laura and I. So all of that person would have to be in working with me in my space with those files. And you know, that's where they have to be. Okay. And I don't think I would ever suggest to this board that we would push any of that information outside of our space ever. I would never suggest that to you. Right. I wouldn't feel comfortable with that.
So why don't we do it again? No means take it out of the budget. Yes means leave it in. And we'll go over when we do the organizational discussion. We'll get specific about what, when, who, where, why. So maybe I should put my glasses on. John, your thought?
I would say for this year, I would say no. Perhaps
Okay.
another, maybe next year we can bring it in.
Claudia?
I say no this year, next year, maybe.
Paul?
I say no, and maybe for next year, maybe have these conversations earlier, because Cheryl gave me some good insight. Then she finished up answering what I think Brian was trying to explain before I answered to me about the Envision. So I appreciate that, but I wish I would have had, prior knowledge and understanding about it. It just seems like so late and just so all over the place that it's not that I don't want to help her or help the office and get, from the superintendent's perspective, the process better and clearer, but I think that'll come with some part of the reorg as well. So I'm going to say wait as well.
Okay. Howard?
No, I agree with Paul, and so the answer is no.
Okay. Chris?
I say yes.
Okay. Jen?
I'm going to say no.
Okay. I mean, it's kind of a horse and cart thing. I mean, I don't want to see a person hired until we know exactly what they're doing and who they're going to do it with, and we've got the organization, because this person is not going to be able to act as the director of HR. So who is that? And all those things. So I'm going to say yes, because I would put the money in the budget, but I guess we'll just leave our system alone until, another year and a half. Okay. Where are we? Was that the end of yours, Brian?
Depends on what questions remain. I'm happy to go through the entire of the budget if you want. If that's not what you want, I can just take your questions and make the amendments based on your guidance. As of right now, coming out of the budget, I have a $43,000 personnel assistant, a $56,000 interfund transfer. That will translate to a reduction in the, we will be under the tax levy limit by a certain amount. Unknown what that amount is, because we don't know how much state aid we're going to be getting just yet. But as of right now, those two things you will not see in the budget for your approval on the 20th.
And you guys feel, and I guess I don't remember whether I saw Mike on, but Caroline, you guys feel that you have everything you need to move forward, assuming the budget goes through, that you need to move forward with pre-K? Caroline?
Well, when we're saying everything we need, there's things that are budgeted within the budget that we don't have yet, but we have them budgeted for. I think Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, there's like $20,000 for equipment purchases and then 2 teachers and 2 aides. So yeah.
And $1,000.
Okay.
And supply money.
All right. Any other questions? I mean, we've Brian's taken us through this a few times. Any other specific questions or areas you want to focus on?
Yep. Brian,
sorry, I didn't get it.
Yes.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
Page 30, Brian, there's I forgive me if you went over this a couple times ago, but page 30, maybe you want to put up for the board, and you're muted too. Page 30 there. Yeah, So we're adding for a consultant, but we already had a consultant. So where did that come out of the budget? We must have had it.
Yeah, that came, so that was, hold on. Not adding it in, that was previously budgeted in, that 1622 code, John, is a brand new code for safety. I think this might be the second year of that.
Okay. So it's going from 0 to 19.5, and we must have, we had it, I know we had a consultant prior.
It was, you see this right here, the 1624.94?
Right.
Yep. So the safety consultant and the cross contract.
Okay. So just movement. Okay. Page 85.
Please hold.
By the way, for people that know me, this is probably the fastest you'll ever see me go on a budget. 55 pages in one swoop.
I didn't get my list of questions this year.
No, you didn't.
I didn't know what to do with myself.
I know. You had nothing to do. Okay, so 2630 150, the tech support, that's a new title. We typically had the integration specialist there. So I'm wondering, why was it retitled and why was it 0? I thought we had integration specialist in for this present year.
So that is.
Which one are you talking, John?
The top one, the 150.
This was formerly Kirsten.
Isn't that
Kaufman.
Kirsten?
Yes. Yeah. And I'd have to check and see where we plucked it from, but it looks like it wasn't budgeted in that line, John. I'll take that as a takeaway to let you know where it came from. I don't want to search through the document right now.
So why was the title switched from integration specialist to technology support?
That's just that's a treasurer function. That's how it was typed in there.
So it's not intended to hire a tech person.
No.
Okay. I just want to make sure.
No, just James and Sean would remain our two techies, and that was, as it's budgeted now, that's an integration technology specialist or however, whatever title we had in there previously.
Okay, I think let's see. I got a couple little things, but I think I'm gonna forego it. Let's go down to page 121, near the end. Our health insurance went up 12%. So do you want to comment about that? We had a day holiday, I think.
What page, John?
121. So health insurance there, it grew by quite a bit. That's about 12%, $544,000.
Yeah, we had a lot of retirees. So with each retiree, we bring on an additional plan.
And each new hire too.
And each new hire, correct.
How much did it actually go up? How much is our base going up?
The DHIC plan is going up about, well, not about 0%. And it's actually a -1 when we take into account the retirees on Medicare. And we were at, MVP said that they were 4%. So it's not the average of that because we have many fewer MVP contracts than we do DHIC contracts. So it's somewhere between the two, but it's going to be, if you do the math on it, it's probably going to be around 1.5%, at worst. So a very good year.
So what explains the difference between 1.5 and 12? I mean, I know you talked about retirees, but they don't pump it up by hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Between 1.5. Say that again, John. What's
you mentioned MVP was 4%, and you said overall it's probably 1.5%.
Yeah.
For everybody. So what explains the difference of 10.5%? So that retirees don't explain that full amount, right?
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll get you the information about the number of plans that we budgeted in the previous year and the number of plans that we budgeted for in this year.
Okay.
And I'll share that with you.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
That's about it.
Okay.
All right, anybody else? Okay. All right, thanks, Brian.
Okay, so, yeah, sure. So what we're planning on doing is taking out those two pieces and presenting the budget, creating the property tax report card based on the remainder of the budget. And we'll present that as the superintendent's proposed budget for next board meeting.
Okay.
Yes? Okay.
Yep. All right. Let's see here. Next is to approve the seeker determination for Elm Drive. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, so I mean, this is basically the seeker for the $175,000 project, correct? For Elm Drive for the new entrance.
That's correct.
Okay. Any questions, comments, concerns? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, very good. Then we have the high school project. It's the replacement of the concrete walkways. Do I have a motion?
So
I'll
moved.
make,
Sorry.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right. Questions, comments, concerns? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? Okay, very good. All right, we'll move to the president, vice president's report. The only thing specifically that I wanted to bring up was we still have not gotten an extension on the public meeting, whatever, from Albany. I think we're going to have to, assume that it's coming. I've asked Cheryl to get with Elliot to lay out a plan. It's probably going to be the high school auditorium, I would think, because we also need a place where we can get up and go do executive session and then come sit back down. We'll have to figure out all the details. There's, those new little camera thingies that they bought for that seem to be working nicely. Maybe we can use those, but hopefully in the next, before we go past, because our next board meeting is still under the guidance. The one after that is not. That I think we have a Tuesday and maybe it's a Friday. That the current public meeting thing expires between those two. So we need to make sure we're ready for it. So just stay tuned. Hopefully it won't be a big deal. One thing I did want to ask though, and John will tell you, I was one of the ones that was against recording and videoing and all that good stuff of our meetings. But quite honestly, I've been happy to see, the increase in public participation in these meetings. So I would like to continue. I don't know if we have to do it with somehow do it through Zoom or just live stream it on YouTube. Again, we'll let Elliot figure that out. But I'd like to continue that unless anybody has a problem with it. Okay. Howard, you have anything?
No, but just to follow up on your statement that I think the making us these board meetings really easy for our public, our fellow public to watch us, our fellow taxpayers and fellow parents of students, to watch us at their leisure and speed through it, and everything else is a win-win, and it should be continued some way so parents can continue to, if they don't choose to physically show up, they can watch us at leisure after, on the weekends if they have nothing better to watch. Okay, that's all.
All right, very good. All right, Laura?
Good evening, everybody. Finally, it's my turn. I just want to say that we are in exciting times here. We are moving into full-time in-person for many of our students. May 12th, Elm and Alden will be launching this new endeavor. And then on April 19th, middle school and high schools will be launching full-time in-person. Of course, remote is always an option, but the buildings have been a flurry of activity, moving desks, moving furniture, making sure that we have the right setup for our teachers and our students. And just, I have a little information around Elm right now, and then I don't know if Tom and Rick want to share anything that they've been noticing, experiencing, and doing in preparation for this move. Elm, they're still collecting surveys. There are 37 families that haven't submitted their surveys, and we're thinking that some of these families might have their children who are 5 days right now and may not think that they have to submit these surveys. So his team down there is calling families to ensure that the surveys are filled out and that we are providing the education that they prefer, the option that they prefer. Right now, we have a total of 52 kindergartners, 2 confirmed remote, and we're waiting for 14 families to get back to us on whether they want remote or full-time in-person. In first grade, we have 58 total. We have 2 confirmed remote and 13 no responses. So that's their job to contact those families. And then second grade, we have 60 total students, 5 confirmed remote, and we're waiting for 10 responses. And Mike was just sharing that he's working closely with the custodial team and making sure that everything is set and ready for our students' arrival, and that teachers have been coming and going, making sure their classrooms are set up the way they like them to be set up, as well as trying to figure out what are some special things that we can do for the students who arrive, as well as our remote students. Rick and Tom, did you want to add anything, or?
Well, I can just echo that we also have 19 students who have not committed one way or the other through their parents. And so we have maybe a little bit better number of responses. We also sent out a Blackboard announcement tonight to specific families to get those responses in, and we already received some. I just haven't looked at them yet tonight. But and then also, talk about following custodians around, or I think they enjoyed showing off what they did over the break, and so our building is looking like it's ready, pretty close to ready to go. And we've solved some of our issue with regard to I know you were worried about the 5th grade lunches, or the lunches for getting out of the classrooms. I think we solved that issue. The middle school is lending us some of their lunch tables because they're doing it differently in the middle school. So we can house 3rd and 5th grade in the lunchroom, and possibly maybe one other room, not necessarily classroom, but another room for lunch. So it's looking brighter. I know throughout the week, as we work with the teachers as they come in, and we get things organized in the classrooms. When they took all their teaching materials home, so it looks like their teaching stations aren't set up quite yet because it's at home, but they'll be setting those up toward the end of the week as well. So pretty exciting. And just to say that, hey, we're going to have over 140 kids in the building. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Tom, are you guys running, are the kids going to be taking the computers home every day just in case something happens overnight? Or are they just going to leave them home, or leave them wherever? Well, not wherever.
That's a good point, because we did talk about, with more kids in the classrooms, that we might have some charging issues, to deal with. And so we don't know how we'll handle that exactly right now. But we had a faculty meeting today, but we didn't bring up that issue. And so we'll see what, I'll be sending a notice out to the staff to say, hey, what are we doing with this? Good question, Perry.
There you go, Tom. I mean, it's just, I'm just curious because, you know, even with, well, hopefully knock on wood, no more snow days, but, you know, something happens overnight or something happens in the afternoon, just want to make sure they have their stuff in the right place, but that you guys will figure it out. And Rick, how about the high school?
Good evening, everyone. So at the high school, as of this morning, we were still missing a third of our surveys. So I sent out a Blackboard text, email, and phone call asking for them to kindly respond as soon as possible. And indeed they did. So we had over 45 respond right away. So we're still missing about 45, 50 survey responses in terms of families making a determination whether they're going to be in person or remote learning. But this morning I worked, actually all day, I worked with Mrs. Mattis, and we were going through all of those survey results and making sure that based on those results that we had enough to see if I had to make any room assignment changes, I should say. So based on each of those classes, based on those numbers, we have some classrooms that are larger in space. For example, room 204 could fit as many as 30 students. Our regular classrooms could fit 18 students, and our science classrooms could fit 14 students. So based on those survey results that are coming in, we may have to change some room assignments, but most likely not. But I am happy to report, and again, I don't have the final numbers, but we do have significantly more students that are going to be coming in the fourth quarter, and that's very exciting.
Great.
Can I ask a really quick question? Is there, and I don't know, I know Holly's not here to answer. I didn't know, Laura, if you can address it, but I know like with the lunches, when, you know, we had some kids that were in 5 days, some were not. As far as like buying lunch, like I just like, for example, if a child was only in, you know, Monday, Tuesday, but now they're in 5 days, they might be buying more. I know they were looking into having like other food options, but you know, like, can they buy milk or can they buy like, well, like some of the like add-ons type thing? I didn't know if we knew if that could, you know, with more kids in school.
Looks like Tom wants to answer.
I know, somebody has an answer. I'm so excited.
I have some of the answers. So I know that Mike had set up a time to meet with Holly and to discuss on Drive a little bit further. I'm understanding that yogurt meals will be an option to the main dish every day. We still have issues with last year. What happened? Well, every year what happens is that the kids really, they look at the main dish when it comes out and they say, oh, that looks good. And they give up on the yogurt meal that, you know, that they had planned. Or they look at the main dish and say, oh, that's not so good. And they take an extra yogurt meal and they don't have enough prepared. So we have to deal with that, but we will have more options available.
Great, thank you.
All right.
Can they buy, I don't know if anybody knows this, can they buy, like if they brought their lunch, can they put money on that school account and just buy like a milk? Do we know? Or is that a question I should ask Holly?
Yeah, I don't know the answer for that one. That's a good question. I think that they hadn't, the a la carte items in general, they haven't opened up yet.
Okay.
At least
I didn't think they had, but I wasn't sure if that was one I didn't ask about. Okay.
Well,
Thank you.
Brian, did you want to add?
I'm just going to say that hasn't been done yet, and Holly will have to check the requirements from SCD based on the plan that we're currently on.
Okay. Thank you.
But I know she was looking into that in part from your request. So thanks for bringing it up.
Thank you. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, so on to sports update for spring season. The sports that we're going to launch is JV softball, varsity boys and girls track, modified boys and girls track, varsity boys golf, modified baseball, varsity baseball, and JV baseball. Now, from what I'm learning, that hasn't happened in a while. So correct me if I'm wrong, Caroline, that we had 3 levels of baseball and that hasn't been the norm. Okay, so that's good news. And then what we won't be able to launch this year is varsity boys lacrosse, varsity girls lacrosse, varsity softball, and modified softball this year. And just to put this on your radar, we heard that there's new guidance regarding our ability to use the free COVID test kits that were given to us by the health departments for testing athletes. I haven't been able to put my finger on where exactly that guidance is, but it's mulling around and showing up in people's emails. So as soon as I find out whether we can or we can't, I'll let you know. But while we wait for this clarification from the health departments, just want to keep in mind that we're in a very different place than we were when we were in winter sports and fall 2 sports. Spring sports, we don't have any high-risk sports. The CDC is redefining social distancing and noted that surface transmission is lower than 1 to 10,000. There is a focus on ventilation, and this is key to staying healthy, which is happening in the department, which is being said by the Department of Health, CDC, and that these sports are taking place outside. So we have fresh air and sunshine. So those are all good components of making sure that our athletes continue to be safe and healthy. The electrical projects at Elm and Alden are complete, except for some finishing site work at Alden. And I want to say a big thank you and high five and kudos to Mike Ragusa for coordinating all of this, all of these moving parts. And throughout, he remembered to give us updates on a daily basis and send photos, which I shared with the board during my weekly update. And then lastly, the gazebo. I don't know if you've driven by it, but it's in rough shape and it's dangerous. And so we have put some of that orange fencing around it to keep folks off while we're deciding on what our next steps are, whether it's renovation, who we're going to partner with, is this going to be something that we're going to fund? So I look forward to having a discussion at a future board meeting around the information that we have gathered concerning estimates, some people who might be interested in it, and just sort of where the board wants to go with our gazebo. And that's all I have to report.
Very good. Thanks, Laura.
Laura, can I ask a question? So with community transmissions are kind of heading up again. Who decides when the community transmission rate is too high? What authority?
Well, that's a very good question, because it seems to come from the state, because even when we speak with the local Department of Health, they say they're told through some calculation, and then they alert us or they contact us and coordinate. The high rate could be district-wide, it could be building-wide, it could be county-wide. So it's really dependent on what the numbers are and where they are.
Should we trust somebody's in charge of this?
Well, we've been in very close.
Or is it us?
Well, we're all watching, right? We're making sure that we're watching and monitoring on a daily basis. And we are in close contact with the local Department of Health. And these are always our questions. You know, what are the rates? What's the uptick? Is there something that we should be made aware of? Is there a variant? Is the variant in the Mid-Hudson Valley? Which one is it? What are some things that we can do to mitigate? Are there other things that we can think about that we should be using to mitigate? And there's just a lot of information about all the things that we've been doing from the get-go. Might not have been as powerful or in mitigating COVID-19.
What I'm surprised about is we're at like a early December rate, which is just, that was bad then. Yeah. We've kind of learned to settle for higher stuff, I guess. So okay, just
I think politically, John, you don't want to go backwards. Politically, you always want to go forward. So
yeah, I understand.
They're not going to step back. But it would be nice to know, like, that there's a place that's going to say, you got too many out in that building, or you got too many out in your district, or you got too many, the rate is too high here, shut it down or shut that down, or put them all to remote learning again, whatever. It would be nice to know that there's somebody that actually has the authority and the knowledge to do it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what we did when we had to have the middle school and the high school go remote. We're in constant contact with the Department of Health, because every story is different. The scenario is different. We may have 2 COVID positive, but the contact tracing is so massive that we have to go remote so we can do it with due diligence, or it impacts our staff, and our staff
And then
So-
you have to go remote. So there are many variables.
Right. I just bring this up because the CDC guidelines were contingent upon this community rate, whatever that was. And New York State has still not okayed the national recommendations, right? We're
Right.
still waiting on New York State. And our opening is contingent on New York State having a decision. Okay.
Yeah, we follow their rules.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. Cheryl, do we have any questions from the public?
Not tonight.
Okay. If you look at the future agenda items, you got a couple of things that were added, highlighted. But is there anything any of you want to make sure? I really, either the next board meeting or one in May, we need to reserve most of it to focus on this organizational, review and discussion, and so that when we move into the new school year, we have a real clear picture of where it's all headed. So Cheryl, if you can, I guess May 4th. What else do we have? We only have 2 things on May 4th. Why don't we try to keep May 4th as we'll do the budget presentation to the public, and then let's focus on the organizational structure and discussions.
But when are we getting a proposal? When is the board getting a proposal? Is it the April 22nd board meeting?
That was
Yeah,
not,
I mean, if we're gonna,
my understanding was we were going to chip away at it over time and share ideas and use this.
No,
year.
I think we asked for a proposal to come back to the board from you, Laura, by the 22nd. And you were going to we gave you the first opportunity to come to us with your plan. That's what I understood. Anybody else here understand anything different? I know I missed the last meeting, but there was the meeting before that. We had the conversation. So what does everybody else remember?
yeah, and I mean, I think that, we're not talking about, okay, we like that, Laura, go get everybody to get out of their desks and move the whole district up and down the hallways. But, we need to take a look at, here's what I would like to do, being you. Here's what, I see where you're going there, but I really think you need, one of the areas that we ask for focus and need focus is over here. That's why I'm saying if we get that, that proposal on the 22nd, and then on the May 4th, we can sit down and spend most of that meeting focused on what that structure should be. And then, we come back and hopefully in a short period of time, we have something that we feel makes the district better.
I just don't want us to keep seeing it delayed, every time, we can't do it this time, we can't do it that time. There has to be a hard stop. There has to be a hard stop.
So the proposal to us on the 22nd, and then us, the board meeting on the 4th, I think it's the 4th, is our, deep dive, almost like a workshop, a working meeting. Okay. All right. I don't think we have anything that, any clarifications that were needed. So, I think the next thing is executive session.
I did have one other thing about, the board hasn't finished talking about the food service. So Howard, it's up to you to schedule another meeting for the committee and to report back to the board. And the board probably, I don't know if the board wants to let it go for some months or not. So it's up to you guys to schedule.
Well, maybe I'll discuss it with you, John, but
yeah,
I may want to let it go till after budget,
Right.
after
Yeah,
budget vote.
sure.
And then.
Can I ask you a quick question? And it's just a thought. With spring break over and kids back and they're all remote this week, and I know we're giving that pause, would it make any sense to have like a drive-through optional random testing, whatever you want to call it, for like a Friday
Isn't
before
there
all the kids come back? Just the parents say,
have
you know what,
that.
It's scheduled.
oh, you
We
did?
have it.
Okay. Well, maybe we send, I don't know if did a reminder go out recently, like in the last day or two?
You can send a reminder out, sure.
I'm just saying for those that weren't in it before, they might say, you know what, we did go to Myrtle Beach for a week. You know, maybe we should take our kids to just get quick tests.
Yep.
You know, you might get a few more. I don't know, just a thought.
How long were those tests good till? I forget.
Oh,
April something, right?
It
much,
was May.
yeah.
wasn't it?
Oh, was it?
Well, there are
Okay.
some, we have some that are they're good through the school year.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Harry, I needed to ask one clarifying question because I realized I thought I knew exactly what the board wanted, but maybe not. So were we saying that $35,000 of an interfund transfer that we budgeted every year, does that come out as well? Or is it just the increase to the 56 and change that comes out?
I understand.
I think
the entire interfund transfer comes out.
Okay.
Well, I thought what we said was basically go back to the way it was.
Well, isn't that the way it was, Brian?
The way it
How
was
was
the $35,000 interfund transfer.
Oh, okay. Well, if that's the way it was, then I don't like the idea either. But let's go back. You know what? I think we should just stop it and let it go back to the way it was.
And then let's
That
get
makes
this all
sense.
squared away.
Yeah, let's just put a big stop sign up. Let's not change any changes until we really ferret it out.
So leave it at the currently budgeted amount at the 35.
Whatever it was last year, let's leave it at, I guess. Does anybody else have a problem with that, or? But just nothing, whatever existed last year, nothing in addition to that.
Okay.
Just to Chris's question, I got an email from Elm saying that there was rapid COVID-19 testing on Friday for all students who provided parental testing. Did you mean like anyone who kind of wanted to? Like I didn't consent to it, but anyone else that wanted to? Chris, is that what you meant?
Yeah, no. Anybody else that wanted to, even if it's a one-time thing, not that I'm opting in for the whole rest of the school year. Just hey, you know, we have the test. If you want to come, just get a single test. I mean, I don't know if that's your decision. I'm just throwing it out there that we might, get a handful of parents that don't want it normally randomly done when they're not there, but they might take them up on a Friday afternoon and get tested before everyone comes back on Monday. That's just the simple thought.
Yeah.
And just so you know, they can also sign the consent when they come in. They don't have to send it early.
Okay.
All right. Anything else? All right. Have a consideration for. Ooh. Have a consideration for an executive session.
So moved.
Okay. A motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
All
To
right.
not cough on you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, so Cheryl, we're gonna need, because we're gonna have a brief conversation about this, about the superintendent's evaluation. Probably set it for the whole thing for an hour, but give us probably 20 minutes as a board, and then I'll call or text you to send Laura and or whoever in. Okay.
It doesn't let me set time for you anymore. So just when you're ready, just send a text and then
Okay.
Everybody
Okay.
else do we need anybody else? Other than
No, well, I don't know. We're gonna talk about the org chart So Laura, do you need anybody when we come back? Well, yeah, I mean, do you need someone or others to talk about these two?
No.
Okay. All right, send us on our way.
Okay.
Have a good night, Tom and Rick.
Beam me up,
Yeah,
Scotty.
see you guys.
Cheryl.
Thank you, everybody.
Good night, guys.
Sure.
And